I worked 23 years in the Bitterroot Selway backcountry before I understood that some of the trails I patrolled were not the same kind of thing as the others. I want to be careful with that sentence. I don't mean it the way a person who has read too much means it. I mean it the way a ranger means it, after enough seasons to know which drainages run wrong in July and which switchbacks the mule strings won't take twice. My name doesn't matter for this. I retired in the spring of 2021. What matters is what I saw, and what I signed my name to, and what I found in the records when I finally went looking. I'll start with the last one first, because it's the cleanest. Cedar Basin, September. The call came in the ordinary way. A woman named Denise Halverson reported that her brother Aaron had not returned from a 4-day solo trip out of the Cedar Basin trailhead. He was 41, in good shape, an experienced backpacker with a satellite messenger and a filed itinerary. His last check-in ping was from a saddle 2 miles east of Willow Lake. Weather had been clear, temperatures mild, no lightning activity in the previous 72 hours. I ran the intake myself. That was standard for our district. I logged him as a priority 2 overdue, but not yet presumed injured, and set the initial hasty search for first light. By the 3rd day, we were flying. I want to describe how a search actually escalates, because the pattern only becomes visible if you understand the normal shape of the thing. On day 1, you send hasty teams up the reported route. On day 2, you widen. Day 3, you bring in the helicopter and the dog teams, and you start dividing the search area into segments on a large format topographic map pinned to the wall of the incident command post. Each segment is assigned a probability of detection based on terrain, vegetation cover, and what we call last known point drift, a statistical estimate of how far a lost person tends to travel from the point they were last confirmed alive. Aaron Halverson's last known point was the saddle east of Willow Lake. The drift models put his probable location within a 3-mile radius of that saddle. We assigned segments accordingly. On day 3, at 0840, one of our K9 handlers, a woman named Pat Renault, who had worked the district almost as long as I had, radioed in from segment 4. She said her dog had gone off the assigned corridor and was pulling northwest. She asked permission to follow. I said yes. Handlers know their dogs. At 10:15, she called back. She was standing on what she described as the old cutoff above Martin Creek. She wanted me to confirm the segment reassignment. I remember pausing. Martin Creek was 6 miles from the search area. The dog had pulled her across 2 ridgelines to get there. I told her to hold position. I told her I would come to her. I took the truck up the fire road and hiked in from the north. When I reached her, she was sitting on a flat piece of granite eating a sandwich, and her dog, a Belgian Malinois named Trooper, was lying beside her with his chin on his paws, staring down trail. She said, "He won't work anywhere else today. I've tried. He just wants to sit here." I looked down the trail. It was a narrow track, cut into the side hill, unblazed, without any of the standard Forest Service tread markers. It descended into a stand of subalpine fir that had been shadowed by the ridge since sunrise. It looked like every other unmaintained cutoff in that country, the kind of old sheep driveway trail that dozens of Montana drainages still carry from grazing lease days. I asked her what the trail was called. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "It's the one you don't put on the radio." That was the first time anyone said that to me directly. I had heard the phrase before, over the years, in the way you overhear things at the end of long shifts, but no one had ever said it to me as if I already knew what it meant. We found Aaron Halverson's pack at 1340 that afternoon, 400 yards down the trail from where Trooper had stopped. The pack was upright, leaned against a tree, straps buckled. Inside were his food, his stove, his tent, his sleeping bag, and his satellite messenger, still switched on, still transmitting. His last ping, the one from the saddle east of Willow Lake, had been recorded at 3:17 p.m. on the day he was reported overdue. The pack we recovered had been sitting in that stand of fur long enough for the pine needles to accumulate on the top flap, in a pattern that suggested at least 2 weeks of undisturbed weather. We never found Aaron Halverson. The pattern. I want to be honest about something. I did not go looking for a pattern after Halverson. I was 56 years old. I had a bad knee, and I had signed enough negative outcome reports over the years to know that dwelling on them is the thing that ends careers. I filed my incident report. I closed out the search on day 9, and I moved on to the next season. The pattern came for me in the winter of 2018, when I was reviewing archived case files for a district audit. Our records room in the district office is not glamorous. It's a converted storage closet behind the permit desk, with metal shelving and banker's boxes going back to the 1970s. The audit was routine. I was pulling missing person case files at random and confirming that the paperwork matched the digital record. I found Aaron Halverson's file where it should have been, in the 2016 box. His recovery location was logged as Martin Creek Drainage, unmaintained trail segment, approximate coordinates, followed by a set of coordinates I recognized. Out of professional habit, I checked the next file in the box. A hunter named Elliot Vance, missing in the fall of 2014. His pack had been recovered in the Martin Creek drainage. Same coordinates within 100 meters. I checked the file behind that. A climber named Sarah Gutierrez, 2011. Recovered gear, Martin Creek drainage. Same coordinates. I sat down on the floor of the records room and I started pulling files. By the end of the afternoon, I had 31 cases going back to 1978. Every one of them involved a person reported missing somewhere else in the district, sometimes 20 or 30 miles away, in drainages that share no watershed and no trail connection with Martin Creek. Every one of them had physical evidence or canine indication or GPS termination data, or in 6 cases a recovered body at the same set of coordinates on that unmarked trail above Martin Creek. I want to describe the trail properly, since it matters. On the current Forest Service map, the trail does not exist. There is a contour line where the tread would be, and if you know where to look, you can see that the timber pattern reflects a corridor, the way an old wagon road shows itself in aerial photography, even a century after it stops being used. But there is no dashed line, no trail number, no designation. On the 1994 map, the trail is shown as an unmaintained user route, labeled Martin Cutoff. It runs approximately 2 miles between two named trails. On the 1978 map, the earliest one in our archive, the trail is shown running 6 miles, along a different alignment, ending at a location the map labels only as Section Observation 7. Section Observation 7. I had never heard the term. It appeared on no other map I could find in the district office. It appeared in no gazetteer, no historical survey, no Forest Service memorandum I could locate. I photocopied the 1978 map and took it home. The ones who already knew. I want to say something about how institutions carry knowledge they do not officially possess. If you have worked long enough inside any large agency, a hospital, a police department, a national forest, you know that there is the paperwork version of the organization, and there is the version that actually runs the place. The paperwork version is what the auditors see. The actual version is what the shift supervisor knows to do at 3 in the morning when the phone rings. The Bitterroot-Selway district had a paperwork version of its search and rescue procedures. Those procedures were and are excellent. They are widely admired within the interagency SAR community. They are also, I now understand, not the whole of what we did. The winter after I found the files, I started asking questions, carefully. I asked Pat Renault first, over coffee at the ranger station, because she had been the one who said the thing about the radio. She looked tired when I asked, not surprised. Tired? She said, "How long have you been here, Sam?" I told her. She said, 23 years and you're just now asking. That's about average. I asked her what she meant. She said the phrase I would hear, in one form or another, from 4 other veteran rangers over the following spring. She said, "It's not a trail, it's a case." I asked her to explain. She said she couldn't, because she didn't fully understand it herself, but that the way we were trained to handle it was this. If a search operation began to converge on the Martin Creek coordinates, through canine indication, through GPS termination, through helicopter crew request, through anything we were not to name the trail over open radio traffic, we were to use the phrase redirecting toward the ledger point instead. Ledger point. 2 words. Any experienced dispatcher in the district would understand what we meant. She said the phrase had been in use since at least the early 1980s. She said we were not to call the trail by name in written incident reports either. We were to log recovery coordinates only, and to describe the location in geographic terms, unmaintained trail segment, Martin Creek drainage, without ever using a proper name. I asked her who had trained her in this procedure. She said, "The same person who trained you. Probably. He just didn't get around to telling you yet before he retired." The ledger. I found the ledger in April. I want to be careful describing how, because the way I found it was not through any brilliant piece of investigation. It was through a maintenance clerk named Denny Halloran, who had worked in the district office for 34 years and who was cleaning out his desk before his retirement. Denny knew I had been asking questions. He didn't say so directly. He just came into my office one afternoon with a manila folder and set it on my desk and said, "I'm not supposed to give this to you, but I'm not supposed to leave it in the desk either, and I'm out of Fridays." Then he left. The folder contained a single document. It was a photocopy, badly degraded, of what appeared to be a typed report from 1962. The letterhead read, United States Department of the Interior Field Continuity Section, Region 1. I had never heard of the Field Continuity Section. I have since spent considerable time trying to determine whether it ever existed as a named administrative body. I have found 3 other passing references to it, all internal, all in documents that were not intended for public review. The section, whatever it was, appears to have been folded into something else in the mid-1970s, and that something else appears to have been folded into something else after that. I do not know what it is called now. I suspect it does not have a public name. The 1962 document was a memorandum. It was 3 pages long. The subject line read, Standing Recovery, Feature 7, Reassignment of Convergence Coordinates, Bitterroot, Selway. The memorandum stated, in the flat administrative language of a mid-century federal report, that Standing Recovery Feature 7 had been relocated from its previous coordinates in the Sapphire Range to a new set of coordinates in the Martin Creek drainage, effective the fall of 1961. It stated that all district personnel were to be advised that search operations converging on the new coordinates were to be handled under the Standing Protocol. It stated that the previous location was to be delisted from all working maps within a period of not less than 5 years, to avoid what the memorandum called residual convergence attention from experienced personnel. The final paragraph read, As with previous relocations, the feature is expected to require redesignation within a period of 15 to 40 years, depending on regional visitation patterns and personnel turnover. District superintendents should familiarize themselves with the Standing Protocol and should not attempt independent documentation of the feature's behavior. I read that memorandum 4 times in my office with the door closed. Then I photocopied it and took the copy home and put the original back in the folder and returned the folder to Denny Halloran's desk, which had been cleaned out and emptied in the 2 hours I had been reading. Denny had already left the building. He did not come back. What the records contained. I spent the next 18 months, quietly, on my own time, doing what I should have done sooner. I want to describe what I found without dramatizing it, because the material does not need dramatizing. I found that the missing person files in the Bitterroot-Selway district contained a subset of cases. I counted 83 between 1961 and 2019, in which the final recovery location, or search termination point, was recorded within a 200-meter radius of a specific set of coordinates on the unmarked trail above Martin Creek. Not the location of disappearance, not the last known point, the point of convergence. In every one of those cases, the person had been reported missing somewhere else. In some cases, considerably else. A hunter reported missing in the East Fork drainage, 31 miles south, had been recovered, or rather his pack had been recovered, at the convergence point. A pair of hikers reported missing on Trapper Peak, 22 miles east across a range with no trail connection to Martin Creek, had left GPS tracks that terminated at the convergence point. The files contained additional documents I had not looked at before. I found K9 team reports in which handlers noted, in the small additional observations field, phrases like "animal indicated northwest of assigned segment," consistent with prior team experience, and "animal declined to work assigned corridor." Team redirected to Ledger Point per standing protocol. Ledger Point. There it was, in the paperwork, in dozens of files, over decades, in the handwriting of people I had worked with and trusted and never asked. I found helicopter flight logs from the Ravalli County contract pilots. The logs contained, on average, 1 to 3 additional flyovers per active search that were not accounted for in the assigned segment allocations. Every additional flyover, in every log I checked, was over the Martin Creek convergence point. The pilots had a code for it. They logged it as CV7 overflight, no visual. I asked one of the older pilots, a man named Kip Larson, what CV7 meant. He said he didn't know. He said his father, who had flown for the same contract company in the 1970s, had used the same code, and he had learned it from him without asking. I found trail camera images. This is the part I have the hardest time with, so I will describe it plainly. The district maintained a small network of unmanned game cameras along certain drainages, primarily for wildlife monitoring, but also in some segments for informal security in areas with recurring illegal outfitter activity. One of those cameras, Camera 14-B, was mounted on a lodgepole pine approximately 3/4 of a mile up the unmarked trail above Martin Creek, in a location the district's official maps did not acknowledge the trail existed. I checked the deployment record. Camera 14-B had been installed in 2003 by a seasonal wildlife technician who was no longer with the agency. The deployment record listed the location as Martin Creek Drainage, established observation point. Established, not new. Established. I pulled the camera's memory card in the summer of 2019. The card contained several thousand images from the previous 6 months. Most of them were what you would expect from a wilderness camera: elk, mule deer, a black bear, and 2 cubs in June, a fisher in July, a lot of empty frames triggered by wind-moving branches. Approximately 60 of the images showed people walking down the trail, away from the camera, toward the convergence point. The camera was oriented such that it captured hikers from behind at roughly 40 yards. The images were time-stamped and date-stamped. None of the timestamps corresponded to any permitted trail use because the trail did not officially exist and could not be permitted. I recognized 3 of the people in the images. One was Aaron Halverson. The image of him was time-stamped 4 days after his last satellite ping. He was carrying his pack. He appeared to be walking at a normal pace. One was Elliot Vance, the 2014 hunter. His image was time-stamped in 2017, 3 years after his disappearance. One was Sarah Gutierrez, the 2011 climber. Her image was time-stamped in 2019. I sat with the memory card for a long time before I did anything with it. Then I did what the standing protocol required. I logged the card as recovered equipment from an unmaintained observation point. I filed it under the appropriate case numbers, and I did not describe the contents in the incident summary. I want to be honest about that. I had a choice, and I made it. I made it the way rangers before me had made it. I made the paperwork version of the choice. What I understood, here is what I came to understand over the course of that 1.5 years, and what I still believe now. The trail above Martin Creek is not in any sense I can defend to a skeptical listener a location. It is something else. It is a case, as Pat Renault said, in a way I don't fully understand and don't expect to. It is treated administratively as a recurring incident that has to be managed, the way a certain avalanche chute might be managed, or a certain river crossing where drownings recur. But avalanche chutes and river crossings stay where they are. This one does not. The 1962 memorandum said the feature had been relocated to range. I checked. I found, in an old regional archive in Missoula, 3 archived missing person cases from the Sapphire Range in the 1940s and 1950s. All 3 had convergence points within 100 meters of each other, on an unmarked trail that on modern maps of the Sapphires does not exist. The trail is shown, faintly, on a 1949 map. After 1961, it is gone. The 1962 memorandum implied that the previous relocation, before the Sapphires, had been somewhere else again. I did not pursue that. I was not brave enough. I want that on the record. What I understood, in the end, is this. The disappearances are not caused by the trail. That is the mistake I made for a long time, and I think it is the mistake most of my colleagues made too, even the ones who knew more than I did. The disappearances happen for the ordinary reasons. Weather, injury, navigation error, bad luck. The things the public believes. But once a disappearance has happened, in a certain part of the country, in a certain window of time, the trail is where the search goes. The evidence converges there. The dogs pull there. The helicopters overfly there. The GPS tracks terminate there. The packs are recovered there. Sometimes, in the trail camera images, the people themselves appear there, walking away, days or weeks or years after they should be anywhere at all. The trail is not where they disappear. It is where the park decides they were always heading. I don't know what that means. I want to be clear about that. I am not offering a theory. I am telling you what the evidence over 60 years of institutional record-keeping in one district in western Montana describes. I am telling you what the ledger says. After I retired in April of 2021, I did not make a public statement. I did not go to a journalist. I signed the exit paperwork. I turned in my badge and my radio and my keys, and I moved to a small house near Hamilton where I do carpentry work for people who don't ask what I used to do. I told myself, for the first 2 years, that the thing was contained, that whatever administrative arrangement had been in place since 1962, or before, would continue without me, and that my part in it was over. I had not exposed it. I had not resisted it. I had done what my predecessors had done, which was to file the paperwork the way the paperwork wanted to be filed, and to carry the rest privately. In the fall of 2023, a Freedom of Information release from an interagency wildland safety review made a batch of previously restricted search summary documents available to the public. I am on a mailing list from my old professional association that flags these releases. I read them out of habit. One of the summaries described a missing person case from the previous spring in the North Cascades of Washington state. A woman named Marisol Ahn, 34, experienced backpacker, had failed to return from a solo trip in a drainage nearly 200 miles from the Montana border, in an entirely different mountain range managed by an entirely different agency under an entirely different search protocol. The summary was 3 pages long. It described the search operation in the ordinary way. On the second page, in the paragraph describing the Day 4 escalation, was a sentence I had to read twice. Ground teams redirected toward Trail Sector 7 for convergence assessment per standing interagency protocol. Canine indication and rotor wing overflight requests concurred. Trail Sector 7, not Section Observation 7. Not Standing Recovery Feature 7. The name had changed again, but the number had not. The summary included an attached map. I opened it. The map showed a portion of the North Cascades I have never visited, a drainage I could not have named before that afternoon. Running along the side hill above a creek whose name I did not recognize, drawn in the light-dashed line that indicates an unmaintained user route, was a trail I knew, as well as any trail in the Bitterroots. The alignment was different. The elevation was different. The forest type was different. But the length was the same, and the shape was the same, and the small notation at the eastern terminus in the same typeface as every other label on the map read TS7. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time with the map open on my laptop. Outside, it was getting dark. I could hear the wind coming down off the sapphires the way it does in October, dry and steady, the sound that used to mean I should check the fire weather forecast before I went to bed. I want to end this the way I would end an incident report, because that is the only kind of ending I know how to write. The trail above Martin Creek. The trail above Martin Creek, so far as I am aware, is still there. I have not been back to it. I do not intend to go back to it. When I look at the topographic map of the Bitterroot Selway that I keep in a drawer in my kitchen, the current one, the one anyone can buy at the ranger station in Darby for $8, the trail is not shown. There is only a contour line where the tread would be, and a certain pattern in the timber that a person who knew what they were looking at might notice. But I have started to wonder, and I want to be careful how I say this, whether the maps we buy at the ranger station are the maps that describe the country, or whether the country is what's left after the maps have decided where the trails should be. I don't know which of those is true. I am not sure the distinction is one a person in my former line of work is allowed to make. What I can tell you is this. If you are hiking anywhere in the Mountain West, and you come across an unmarked trail that is not on your map, and it runs along a side hill above a creek, and the timber has that pattern to it that suggests the corridor has been there longer than the trees, do not take it. Do not follow it to see where it goes. Do not photograph it and send the photograph to a ranger station and ask what it is. The ranger who receives your photograph will know. She will file it under a case number that already exists. She will not tell you which one. The trail is not looking for a destination. It has one. The trail is looking for the hikers, and every map it appears on eventually is ours.